Hello, hello! We're back once again for the Immunostats Christmas special, and similarly to the previous one, I started preparing this yearly review without knowing what exactly to report. But alas, here it is. I can start by saying that looking back, this year had a great impact on me. Be it personally or academic, I was exposed to some extraordinary opportunities and incredible ups, but also some stressful moments and maddening situations with great downs. I began the year in Warsaw, where I moved last year to work closer to my supervisor Nuno at the Warsaw University of Technology. And while there I got the chance to attend his classes on computational biology, work with my colleague and friend André, and participate in the MI2 group meetings, seminars, and even retreats. But by the end of February, Russia invaded Ukraine as a result of a major escalation of this conflict. And at the time, we didn't know how the tensions would evolve. So with my wife and family wanting me back home, I cut my stay shorter than expected and flew back to Portugal. I came back to IMM and the Luís Graças group at the Faculty of Medicine and continued to work with Nuno at a distance, trying to finish up the work on ME/CFS and patient misdiagnosis while studying data from the UK ME/CFS Biobank. At the end of March, beginning of April, I experienced what I've been calling the meetings season. So, being back in Portugal allowed me to attend and present my work on the misclassification of complex diseases at the Lisbon Young Mathematicians Conference, and also talk to some hardcore mathematicians about my work. And right after that, I attended the annual meeting of the Portuguese Society for Immunology, where I presented the initial results and ideas from our analysis on the immunological patterns and onset-based subgroups of ME/CFS patients on a poster session, and also talked to some hardcore immunologists about my work. And I also presented at the IMM PhD meeting, where I got to know the amazing PhD community at my institute, as so far, and due to the COVID-19 pandemic, I've been mostly working from home. Amidst all the conferences, meetings and greetings, our team, along with other great researchers, published a paper on the identification of candidate antigens to the Epstein-Barr infection that could serve as potential biomarkers for the diagnosis of certain subsets of ME/CFS patients, namely those who have had a prior infection to their disease onset. During this time, and with the support of my supervisors, I finally submitted a paper on the misdiagnosis of ME/CFS patients as a corresponding author. I could say that this was a 1 year in the making paper, but by the end it was mostly just being dragged. So, after a successful meeting season and with a new and good publication under the belt, my co-supervisor, Luís, approached me for a collaboration to analyze the database for the Portuguese COVID-19 registry and estimate the risk of reinfections with the most recent Omicron subvariant at the time, the BA.5. This was in early July, when few was known about the subvariant, and Portugal was the first in Europe to register BA.5 cases, where a measurable fraction of them were reinfections. We found that previous infections would grant a protective effect against reinfection, with infections from past Omicron subvariants, namely BA.1 or BA.2, maximizing this protection. This is all in a highly vaccinated populations, such as the Portuguese community, where more than 98% of the population above 12 years old is vaccinated. Our work was successfully published later on in the summer at the New England Journal of Medicine. During the final stages of this publication, I had the tremendous opportunity to go back to Poland for 3 weeks in September and, alongside Nuno, give a lecture on regression modeling and regularization at the NGS School 2022. The workshop was great, and I even got a chance to attend the rest of the lectures. The overall experience from this summer school was indescribable. I was given the opportunity not only to talk and teach about what I like, but above all, I was able to get to know incredible people from all around the Central and Eastern Europe. All this within the context of machine learning and computational biology. This was one of the main highlights of my year, and hopefully more opportunities like this one can arise in the future. This was also my first trip with paid expenses as a speaker, so that's also a plus. But not everything went perfect this year. While juggling between summer courses, work and analysis still to be done on the topic of COVID-19 in Portugal, making advances on my project on MECFS and every other thing in my personal life, I set aside the submitted paper on misclassification with me as a corresponding author. That work that took more than a year to be polished and concluded was still hanging, and the revised article came back with the corrections to be made. At the time, I had the poor discernment to think I could postpone the resubmission and find time to work on the project while doing all the other parallel things, but I was wrong. Through my fault alone, the patient journal reviewers and editors waited for as long as they could accept, and I got the paper rejected. This was an eye-opening moment for me and made me realize that we need to have balance in our lives and moderation of work is crucial. First, we're not able to say yes to every great opportunity that appeared, regardless of how tempting they might be. And second, sometimes we need to ask for help and show the mess and doubt we have in order to be better supported, not come only when everything is perfect, polished and finished. All in all, I'm happy with my work, but considering other conditions, this rejection was avoidable, and my first experience as a first-time corresponding author was a bust. I have since gone through the revisions, which improved the article, and I have resubmitted it. To conclude the year, we still had 2 more publications. One more on the topic of COVID-19. This time it was a follow-up study assessing the gradual waning of the natural immunity acquired upon infection with the initial Omicron subvariants, BA1 and BA2, and how this loss of immunity over time ultimately impacts the risk of BA5 reinfection. And the other was an article on the impact of misclassification of patients and imperfect serological tests in association analysis of MECFS within the context of COVID-19. This one was an application to our previous ideas, and it was done for the proceedings book from last year's conference of the Portuguese Statistical Society. So, we have reached Christmas, the last meeting of our lab for 2022, and almost the end of this video. I have 1 more year left in my grant, and a lot of projects and ideas I still want to see concluded. I ended last year's review mentioning that 2021 felt somewhat lacking in terms of showing a final product. I would say that when I mentioned that, I was probably looking only in terms of papers published. And in that front, this year, I was certainly able to make progress. However, despite only showing or almost only showing that here, I've came to the realization that to publish is not why research is done, and I want now to be able to keep on asking interesting questions, to study and collaborate in order to contribute with whatever infinitesimal small grain of knowledge that, along with all other grains, will ultimately form a good enough path or stretch of beach or whatever hypothetical comfortable scenario you might think of where all of us can lean on. There is still a lot to read and keep up with until the end of my PhD, but in 1 year's time I'll come back to tell you how it was. And now, as promised to Nuno and André, here's me performing Christmas music on the violin.